Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Vivian Otabor, who is an executive coach and a career strategist. Vivian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here today.
Oh, the pleasure is all ours. I'm excited to hear about your career and your journey and all the things that you have done in your company and the movements and stuff that you've been doing. You have a very detailed bio and also a very nice title over here. So we definitely want to dive into that. But before we get into all of that, let's give the listeners a little bit of understanding of your background, your cultural background, and where you grew up.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Nigeria. I grew up born and bred in Nigeria, Lagos to be precise. A lot of people know Lagos for the Daily December. So that's actually where I'm from. And I moved to the United States in 2012. So a little in my adult age. I'd already completed my primary, secondary, post-secondary education before moving to the US. So I came here in my adult age.
Hmm. So, talk to me a little bit more about the culture where you grew up. Like, what does it look like for the individuals that are not familiar with where you're from? Give us a little bit of understanding of what that looks like on that side.
Yes, absolutely. So growing up in Nigeria was absolutely fun. It was fun. It was family oriented. It takes the entire village to raise a child.
Hmm.
And so what that means is everyone is involved in your growth. Everyone has some part to play in who you become, the things that you do. Everyone is trying to shape you to be someone better. And so that's a community driven society where it's, very intentional about the people around you, family, friends. And so that's how the culture is. It's very different from the US. In the US, everyone is like, mind your business. Everyone just, go to
uh,
work, hustle,
true,
make
true, true.
money, pay your bills. Whereas back there, it's very community driven. Everyone cares about what the other person is doing and how they can help, how they can contribute, how they can just make life easy for everyone. So even though whatever you see in the news, part of it is true. There's suffering in the land. Things are not so great. The resources are not as good as how it would be in the US. The government should be doing better. The government is not as, um, you know, forthcoming as they should be. And so that's the reason why you see a lot of people migrating to the US or to Canada or the UK to have a better life. However, if reverse was the case, if things were better, if the government was doing better and all of the resources were provided, I can bet you that people would not migrate from Nigeria to any
Mm.
other country.
It's when you talk about Nigeria, I know that there is a lot of development also there. I know a lot of people have been traveling there on tourists, like being a
Mhm.
tourist. They said it's very beautiful. It's starting to look more like New York in a sense.
Yeah,
Certain areas, not everywhere, but certain
yeah,
areas. It just goes to show how the influence, how things are being influenced on, people are trying to leave Nigeria to go somewhere, but Nigeria is turning into that in a sense.
hmm,
Um,
yeah,
but I've heard a lot of great things about Nigeria. I haven't gone there yet, but I do admire the food, the culture,
yeah,
like you said, the community that comes from that Nigerian culture. You know,
yeah, absolutely. It's very cultural. There's good food,
oh, come
there's
on.
good music. Everybody knows about Afrobeats,
Yes,
it's
yes,
taking over
that's
the
massive.
world.
That's
Yeah,
massive. Everybody watch these, Instagram videos and seeing all these kids from like all different parts of Africa and being like, wow, this is like, and with the limited amount of resources they have, the feeling that comes from
yeah,
it. That's something about that the African culture where it's
yeah.
like it's like a rhythmic beat that people are just born with. It's
Hmm.
just like let's get up and just move. And it's just like
Yeah,
a vibe. I've got a smile on my face every time. I might be eating some eba, some gari, some pepe soup, some fufu, Hey,
There
I'm
you go.
you know, you know, we got to get it right.
Yeah.
And just watching and enjoying that. So, it's I'm glad you were able to kind of share a little bit more about, Nigeria and the beauty that it does
Yes.
have, because, you could always see things in books and hear about what people think it looks like, but I'm glad you're expressing that.
Yeah.
Um, the when growing up in Nigeria, right? Family and everything. What were some like the values and experience that shape your identity before you came to the US?
So Nigeria is a very religious country. I'll put that out there, right? Anybody who has been to Nigeria or is Nigerian will tell you that it's a very religious country. People put God first, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, it's religion. So religion is like top on the list, it's like at the very top tier. And that's one of the things that has shaped me, understanding that there's a higher purpose to every one of us. So we're here on earth to not just take up space, but to
Yeah.
fulfill purpose. We have an assignment that we have to deliver on. God has brought us here for a reason. And so we have to tap into that source to understand what is our purpose here? Why are we here? What impact are we here to make, right? How can we make a difference? We're not just here to occupy space. Like when we leave the earth, can we say we have achieved our purpose of actually being here,
True.
right? Did we just come here to occupy space? And that's not the case, right? And so that's one of the things that has really shaped me. And when I came to the US, um, it was different. Although I had to find my community, I had to find a good church, I had to find the folks that I could relate to, but nevertheless, it was still difficult. It was not like what I knew back home in terms of religion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about you touched on it a little bit, but I want to get a little bit more into it. When you arrived in the U.S., like what was like your first experience? Like what did you see? What did you feel? Like you know, leaving Nigeria and coming
Mhm.
across the seas. You know what I'm saying? Coming to the U.S. And where did you end up when you came to the U.S.?
So I started out in Ohio, Columbus,
Oh
Ohio.
no, 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 no disrespect, no disrespect to anybody from out there, but come on, you didn't
Whew.
even go to like New York.
Columbus, Ohio. It was tough. When
Woo.
I tell you, I was like, wait, what is going on? Like, what is this place? But yeah, that's where I started out. And just a little bit of background so people understand. I didn't relocate because I needed a better life. I like to put that full disclosure. I relocated because my spouse was here. And, we decided long distance relationship would not work. I had a good job back home. I worked at a multinational organization. I worked at Coca-Cola, and I worked with the folks in Atlanta in the head office in Coca-Cola here. And so for me, it was a case of, okay, I'm relocated. I'm not going to struggle. I'm going to just basically continue how my life has been in Nigeria. I would have a better job, well paying, I would earn dollars, but I wouldn't necessarily need to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But that was not the case.
Oh, this is when you break down the story, huh?
Yeah. That was not the case. That was not the
Oh
case.
no.
And this was where reality hit me.
Okay, let's
And
talk about
nobody
it.
tells you this. Nobody, they don't teach these things, right? You don't read these things in books because you feel like you already have the degree. And a lot of immigrants don't have my story. I'm one of the very unique ones where before coming to the US, I already had my bachelor's, I already had an MBA from University of Cardiff. I already had work experience from global organizations, right? So my profile, my resume, my CV, whatever you want to call it, looked good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the train of thought was I would come to the US and I would land a job, I would just easily integrate, no big deal. Now, reality hit me when, first of all, I would apply for jobs and I would hear crickets. Nobody was willing to hire me. Um, I would go for interviews and they would say they couldn't understand what I was saying.
Mm.
And I would think to myself, wait, am I speaking a different language? I know that I'm speaking English and I know that I speak good English. There's nothing wrong with, how I speak. But for some reason, either because you had foreign degrees or foreign work experience, people made me feel like I was less of. People made me feel like maybe because I didn't have an American accent or I didn't have American degrees,
Right.
that, I wasn't good enough or that I couldn't do the job, right? And so this was really where the challenges started. And for people, and of course, I was still pretty young, even though as an adult, I was still pretty young. Um, if you're not strong, if you're not well grounded in who you are as a person, your confidence, your identity, these things can actually just break you to believing that you're less than the person you actually are, right? And so I made loads of mistakes because I would ask people who are already here, like, what do I need to do? And people gave me all sorts of crazy ideas. Some people said, go back to school, right? And I'm thinking to myself, wait, what does that even mean? I already have a bachelor's, I already have a master's. Why do I need to go back to school to get what degree again? Right? And it's not like let's be real. The fees here are high, right? It's not
Yes.
like you're getting a scholarship or it's free tuition. No, the school fees here for going back to get another master's was extremely expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, if that's what I need to do, that's what I need to do, which for me was a big mistake. So I had to go back to school to get a second master's, right? Which I didn't need. And I did that for 18 months. I was, going to school. I got a job, an underpaying job. So based on my skill set, someone who has an MBA doing a very low paying job, it didn't align, right? But I still stuck it out and I did what I needed to do just so that I could, for the most part, um, don't not to be idle, right? Not to be idle, to ensure that I keep learning, I keep pushing, and I keep making the efforts to get to where I want it to be.
And is that where like you want to say that you kind of like some of the things you had to integrate to kind of get into to kind of assimilate yourself into the American culture? Were
Mhm.
there certain things that you were doing at that time?
So in the beginning, I didn't know. So I made loads of mistakes, right? Because, like I said, all of those rejections have started playing on my mindset. It has started affecting me and my identity. And so I started going into a shell, right?
Okay.
I would be hesitant to go out to networking events. I would be hesitant to go out for team building activities. Like once work was over, I'm like, deuces, I'm going to my house, I'm going to my family. I had two children at the time.
Whew.
Um, if we had activities from school, I would do all of the coursework and the homework, and I would say, I'm done, I'm going home. I didn't want to like interact or participate in any extracurricular activities. And I feel like that was a big mistake, right?
Hmm.
So those are some of the mistakes that I made. And now I teach people, like especially the new immigrants, if you're new, you need to go out, you need to integrate, you need to connect with other people. You cannot
Yeah.
be
You gotta get involved.
inside and just trying to be by yourself, trying to read all the books, trying to watch TV or YouTube. You have to go and talk to people because people have the information that you need. What you need is at the fingertips of another person, and all you have to do is connect with them. If you connect with them genuinely, you're able to actually get what you want. They're able to connect you to what you need and where you need to be.
So I think when it comes down to, you mentioned it a little bit earlier about like, was I speaking English, right? This is where a lot of the thought leaders that have come on the show have expressed that that was a very hard thing for them to do. Coming from a distant country, speaking a different language, obviously speaking English, but speaking with an accent. This is when people start to say, "Well, I don't want to speak up because I'm looked at differently," right? So how do you work through that and feel a sense of belonging at that point in time when you know, guaranteed you don't, it's apples and oranges, but then you're trying to find a way to connect and communicate, but you still have um, that level of disconnect. What were you doing?
Yeah, so at the time, I didn't know this. At the time I didn't have the grit. So like I said, I was into a shell. But later on, I started realizing like I cannot shrink myself for these people, right? I'm who I am. I know what I am. and whose I am, and I'm going to show up as I am. And if you
Mm,
like me, that's great. We can
let's
roll
go.
together. And if you do not like me, then you step aside, right? But this is who I am, this is how I sound, and this is why I'm unique, right? And so when I started accepting that reality and I started affirming myself more positively, I became more confident. I would go into rooms and I might not pronounce some words the American way, and I didn't care. If you correct me, I would take the correction. And doing that helped me learn, right? It helped me learn. And before I knew what was happening, I sounded a little more American. Again, this is where the code switch comes in. It's okay to code switch, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm
yeah,
with you.
you absolutely want people to understand you, right? And so this is where the code switching came in. So now I knew how to really switch. Like, okay, I'm in an American room or like just filled with Americans. I'm gonna sound a little American, right? As
Mm,
much as I can. I'm not going to be fake, but I need people to understand me because communication is very key. If I cannot communicate my needs to you, you're not going to be able to help me,
yeah,
right?
no.
That's the reality of it. So I had to learn how to talk slowly because Africans, we talk really fast. So I had to learn how to taper it down, how to enunciate words very clearly. And all of these things took intentionality, right? I wasn't nonchalant about communicating. I was like, you know what? I really need people to understand me. This had nothing to do with emotions. It had nothing to do with sentiments. It was a case of if I need to integrate, if I need to network, it doesn't make sense if I'm networking and people cannot understand what I'm saying. And so I took it upon myself to make the cautious effort to speak more clearly, to speak more slowly so that people could understand me.
Hmm. That does help a lot, because certain cultures they're just so like when they speak, you're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah,
Can understand you. We can pull it back, repeat that
yeah.
again. So I
Mhm.
like how you're giving like clear like something simple. People might think, well, I gotta live in the United States a lot longer to get this accent out, right? But it makes you unique. It makes you beautiful, makes you stand out, right?
Yeah,
Don't fight to lose it, fight to keep it, right?
yeah.
You talked about schooling, right? You talking about master's degree and stuff. I want to know, what did you go to school for? And what were like some of the challenges that you faced during your first job or
In the US,
job search?
what did I go to school for in the US?
Yes.
Okay. So my second master's in the US was
Okay.
international marketing and strategic marketing. Yeah, I can't remember now. It's been long or something like that. I don't
That's
use
kind
that
of okay.
degree, right?
You got me going.
So it was basically go to school because you needed an American degree on your resume, right? Not because I wanted it. I literally listened to people who didn't know better advising me to go back to school to get a
Mm,
master's that I didn't need, right? And so hence why I don't even remember.
I don't know how people encouraging you. Were they gonna pay the bill?
No,
Were they, you need to go back to school. Who's paying the bill?
right, exactly.
Oh my
You
gosh.
know,
Don't recruit me to do that.
exactly. So yeah, so that's what I did. I mean, it was a nice experience because I got to learn or just experience what it was like schooling in the US. And I met a few good people that I'm still friends with today. But if you ask me, it was an unnecessary experience. It was an unnecessary expense that I didn't need. Um, I would still be where I am today even without that degree.
Mm, okay, okay, okay. Now, another question I have for you is like from an immigrant, in your
Mhm.
background, from an immigrant to an impact, strategist, what would you say were like the pivotal steps that you took that started this turning point in your career, help you find your voice and help you build your influence?
Mindset.
Okay.
That's it. I literally had to have a mindset shift. A I moved from a mindset of lacking to a mindset of becoming, to a mindset of I'm not perfect, but I'm going to take steps to be better, to be who I need to be, right? And it's one thing that a lot of immigrants do that is actually holding them back, right? They have this mindset of lack. They have a mindset of I'm not enough. They have a mindset of um just doubt on, doubts, lack of confidence. And it's all of these things are valid because of your environment. You're in a new place, you don't really understand the system, you don't understand the culture, you don't understand the people. It's totally different from everything that you've known, from everything that you've been taught. So those things are valid. However, until that mindset shift happens, where you start looking at yourself as, okay, I'm rediscovering myself. My identity doesn't necessarily need to change because I'm in a new country, right? I just need to learn how things happen here. I just need to learn how people work. I need to learn how you're in a season of becoming, you're in a season of learning,
Yeah.
right? And until people have that mindset shift, they're not going to move out of being stuck.
Mm-mm. The thing that when you look at it like from that immigrant background, like there's already enough struggles that you face just coming here, right?
Mhm.
To add in more struggles and more things and trying to acclimate yourself and trying to connect with people, make friends, find a job, go to school. It's like,
Mhm.
and then you have your parents probably on top of you saying, look, you need to figure this out. You need to make this happen. So there's a lot of pressure. And that's something that, a lot of the thought leaders have spoke about previously on the show, just being like, one of the hardest things is the pressure of trying to be successful, trying
Mhm.
to level up every year. Because, you start to fall victim to the American way. Keep your head down, keep working, right? Just work hard. But then there's so much more to life. And I think that something that, I'm trying to make that connection to is when you said in Nigeria, it's very laid back. People are taking their time and they take time to breathe and enjoy life, right? Then you come to these states and then you start to transfer over and be like, I need to get another master's degree. I need to move. I need to catch up. I need to be with the Joneses. It's a different. How are you adjusting to that switch of a lifestyle?
So I really wouldn't. So there's no comparison, right? Back in Nigeria, Nigerians are hustlers. Africans in general are hustlers, right? They're exceptional. They're go-getters. If
Yeah,
you the news, you're always going to see an African who's killing it, who's achieving something or breaking boundaries. But then if you go to Nigeria, you see all of these individuals who are extremely exceptional, but they still make time for family, they still make time for friends, they still have parties, they still have a good time, they still have a life, right? In the US, there's no life. It's work, 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 work. And if you need to just, hang out with a friend, that has to have been scheduled weeks ahead of time.
come
Like
on,
you
come
can't
on.
just say, oh, let's go have drinks. It's like, dude, I'm working. I gotta pay bills. I have school. I have this. I have children. I don't have a nanny. I don't have. The list is endless. There's one reason or another why people don't have a life here. So back home, a little context. Back home, um, like labor is very cheap, So you see mothers who have children and they also have some type of help in the household, whether it's a nanny, a living nanny, or there's a cleaner, there's a driver, there's someone there's a chef who makes the meals, there's people doing stuff, right? And then you come to the US and all of those jobs that, you had five, six people handling in the house, now it's on one or two people. It's on the husband and the wife, or just you
Yeah,
as an individual, right? And so when you
yep,
think about it, how can you have a life when you're literally taking up the role of five people? You're doing the work of five people.
yeah.
You don't have a
No,
life, right? So it's not really a clear comparison. It's what it is here. That's just how the US is. And so it's extremely important for you to be intentional. So even if you have to schedule out that hangout with a friend and it has to be on the calendar maybe every Saturday or whatever the case may be, you have to be intentional about doing that just so that you can still have an enjoyable life.
okay. I give you that. And I'm glad you are breaking this down because it's important to understand because this leads into like mental health too, right? You could burn yourself out. My father was very big on it. He's immigrant background. He's from St. Lucia. He always says to me, you know, you don't want to burn the candle at both ends,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, you're right. You know, we all fall victim to just that go 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 go, and then you know before you know it, you're 50, and you're like wrinkled, bags in the eyes. You're like, and 50 is supposed to be to do 20, but
Yeah.
you're like, I don't know where the time went, but that's because you know you just lost a little bit of you lost a little bit of that culture, that sense of community, the sense of family, the sense of appreciation of just for good
Mm-hmm.
energy and good vibes and
Yeah.
vibrations. So I'm glad that you're talking about that because as people climb that corporate ladder or their own ladder when it comes down to their success, they still need to dedicate time to that.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be
Absolutely.
I have my bank account is growing. My love for my family should grow. My love
Yes.
for my connection to genuine people should go.
Mm-hmm.
All these things should grow at the same time. So I'm
And
glad.
even your experience as a person, right?
Yeah.
What do you experience as a person? Like the world is so vast. God has done an amazing job, creating this beautiful world. Why do you just want to stay in one place? You need to explore, you need to travel, you need to see places, right? Loads of Americans don't even own a passport, right? And so it's like you're doing yourself a disservice, not being able to travel, see the world, and experience just all the, wonderful phenomenals out there.
The world is a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live in a small bubble, I can only imagine when you were in Nigeria and you came to the US, you were probably like, oh, this is just a culture shock. I don't like it. But when you look back at it, you're like, wow, I did that. I
Mm-hmm.
got to see a part of the world. And some people, your friends is probably still in Nigeria, some of them, right? And they
Yeah.
probably have never even left Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started to travel the world and see different things, and I'm like, hey, wow, you're in Paris. Have you been to New York? They're like, never been. I'm like, whoa, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You're 30. You never been to New York? Like
Yeah.
that's just wow. Maybe you haven't been to Vegas. I get you. But like New York?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but the world is big, the world is massive, and you know it's your oyster. So as long as you travel, I tell people all the time, travel, make those
Yeah.
connections. What's it going to say? What mindset strategy do you credit most of your ability to guide and change in complex environments?
So the mindset strategy, um, I've talked a little bit about mindset, right? Mindset is the very first thing that got me from point A to point B. And so the strategy of understanding that your mindset is ever changing, it has to be evergreen, right? It needs to keep evolving. So if you get to point B, start thinking, how can I get to point C? So it's a mindset of growth. It's a
Yep.
mindset of um, you know, I'm moving, right? I'm not a tree. I'm going to keep moving. I don't have to be stagnant. I don't have to be constant. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to keep finding there's always the next level. And so that mindset has kept me grounded in believing that there's always a next level. There's always something to achieve. After I get one goal, I'm going to go get the next one, right? And what I want to say is with having a mindset like that, sometimes it could be difficult, right? It could be difficult, it could be tiring because you feel like, at what point do I stop? At what point do I, just relax
Yeah.
and know that
Or
I've
pass it to somebody else.
right, but yeah, it's really you have to balance it. But at the end of the day, is whatever you decide to do and wherever you feel your end point should be, how can you create growth within that space?
Mm, mm, mm. You are dropping some gems.
Hmm.
And the fact that you're breaking it down in a very tangible way that the listeners could walk away and be like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand what I need to do. Because sometimes people make it too complex.
Yeah.
You just don't even understand. And you're like, and then people scratch their head and be like, I got to listen to that 4 or 5 times. You're breaking
Yeah.
it down in a way of being like this. I think one of the last listeners, I mean, not last listeners, last thought leaders that was on, she said, just be kind. That was
Hmm.
it. I was like, what? That's
Yeah.
it. And she was like, a lot of my success came through this, that, just being kind. And I
Mhm.
was like, you know what? That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. So I'm always very appreciative when you guys come on and share like little gems like that that could make someone just think twice about what they're doing and their approach to life. You know, how has like your immigrant background, right? Because I know like obviously immigrants sometimes have like this pride for themselves and the resilience, the work ethic, and all that. How has your immigrant background influenced your approach to workforce development and economic empowerment, especially in communities that are often like overlooked?
Yeah, so the immigrant background, first of all, is one of resilience, right? And that's why the name of my organization is called Resilient Immigrants, because first of all, there's nothing easy about leaving the familiar to come to a place where you don't know nothing about or you don't know too much about, right? You might be a tourist, you've traveled here before, but living, experiencing, day to day is totally different than just coming for a 2 week, 1 month
Yeah,
vacation, right? And so, first of all, kudos to all immigrants. You made that step to move away from the familiar, leave your family, leave your friends, leave everything that you've known to come to a place new and really learn from scratch, right? Understand the system, understand processes, all of those things. Now, for me, how this has shaped me in any space I'm in, whether it's workforce, economic empowerment, businesses, whatever I'm doing, right? I have that mindset of I didn't come this far just to come this far, right?
okay,
I
yeah,
have to live with something, right? How am I impacting other people? How am I growing myself? Like, what is in it for me, right? I'm not just going to come check a box, right? I need to get something out of it. And something could mean anything to anybody, right? Some people, it's like, okay, I want to get that paper. I want to get the dollars, right? For other people, it might be, I want to get the recognition.
yeah,
The list is endless, right? But you understanding that you didn't come this far just to come this far is extremely important. A lot of other people, a lot of my clients tell me, I'm coming here to pave the way for my family or the next generation who's going to come behind me so that it's not as tough, right? So you need to understand your why, right? Don't
yeah,
just come here
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
fold your arms and you don't really have any sense of purpose. Purpose is extremely important.
Mm. And you in this time frame you talked about your company briefly. You mentioned it, Resilient Immigrant.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So Resilient Immigrant is a nonprofit organization, a 501(c)(3), and our goal is really to help immigrants thrive. And we do this by providing educational resources, information, workshops. We tell inspiring immigrant stories as well of, the regular immigrants who started from zero, from nothing, and is just picking up pieces of their life, thriving, or even still just surviving. And we also tell stories of individuals who are breaking barriers, breaking boundaries, and excelling exceedingly, just to inspire. Like if this person could do it, they're an immigrant, you can do it as well, right? It's telling inspirational stories. So we do all of these things, and you just have that community where people know or immigrants know that they're not alone. Whatever they're feeling, someone else has felt it before. Whatever they're going through, it's not new. And so having that
Yeah,
community where they can lean on someone, they can ask a question, they can share experiences, laugh at silly things, it's just it's very refreshing. I remember there was a time when we always have like themes in our community chat, and one of the themes was what you didn't know when you first relocated to the US, right? And just hilarious things. For me, it was I didn't know how to pump gas,
oh,
in my car. And in Ohio, it was snowing. Was the day it was snowing so bad. And normally my husband would buy gas for me, but I think he forgot that day and I had to go to work. And I got to the gas station and it was snowing heavily and I didn't know what to do. And I was looking at the pump
The
like,
store
okay.
clerk is probably like, something's going on out there.
I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, because in Nigeria, back home, you have people do those things for you, right? You go
True,
to
true,
the gas
true.
station, you sit in the car, they pump the gas and you pay and you go. And just little things like that. And everyone was sharing their own different experiences, and we could laugh about it. It was relatable. And so having a community like that
Yeah, yeah.
is very refreshing.
And you know when it first happens to you, you're probably not laughing, right? You're like
Right.
probably frustrated. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed. This
Yeah.
happened to me. You're like, I'm not going back to this gas station. But then you find a community of people you could actually share that story, and they're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so funny. Because you know that something happened like that to me when I went
Yeah.
to the pizzeria or something like that. So I think that having communities that could be vulnerable with each other, because that's a vulnerable story, right?
Yeah.
And be vulnerable like this, like Zaka, the platform as well in your company, having environments where people could have that safe space to kind of share that story so that they could actually smile when they say it, because sometimes it's
Mhm.
hard to say that story because you don't know who's going to receive it that way, right?
Yep.
So I'm glad that you know that it's stories like that that truly make a difference in people's lives. I
Yeah.
think you could talk about all the stuff that people do. I did this, but let me tell you a story about how I was so out of it. I knew I didn't fit in. But then it made you think about gas the next time. Guarantee you were pumping gas after that. You built a very big platform, right? And this platform, your organization does a lot of great work. But like, what are you looking to leave behind for the next generation of immigrants?
Resilient Immigrant is is a platform, but it's not just a platform. It's really more than a platform. It's actually a movement. It's a movement to change the narrative that immigrants have to start from scratch. So all these years, people tell you, "Oh, I migrated. I used to be this, something bigger, something better back home. And now I'm a factory worker. Right now I'm a taxi driver.
I get you
Right
that.
now I do delivery, right? That's how I started, but now I'm something bigger, something better, right? Resilient immigrants, we want to change that narrative. The reason why people come in and start from scratch is because they don't have the right information, because they don't have the right resources, not because they're not good enough, not because they have to go back to do something less than they used to do. It's because the information is not readily available to them. And so our Resilient
Mm-hmm.
Immigrants are providing information. We have our Knowledge is Power series to really educate people, provide knowledge, insights, tools, strategies to help people on what they need to do, how they can actually thrive and not just survive, right? So that they don't
Mm-hmm.
have to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just ensuring that we are each other's brother's keeper, right? If I went through all of these struggles, and again, that's the reason why I started Resilient Immigrant, is because I know all the mistakes I made. I know the financial debt I took on because of bad advice to go back to school to go get a master's, right? I don't want the next person who's coming, the next immigrant, to have to make the same mistakes. So when I hear someone ask, hey, what do you need to what can I do? Or someone tells them you need to go back to school, I'm there to say, no, that's a mistake, don't do that. Instead, this is the part you need to follow, these are the things that you need to do, right? So the
Okay.
impact is to ensure that immigrants are valued for their contributions, for their talents, their skills, their expertise, and they don't necessarily have to start from scratch unless they want to or they choose to.
Mm. I love how you're putting that into perspective. You're like, you don't have to start from scratch. It
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like I know a lot of thought leaders that came on, they said I came from school from a
Mm-hmm.
distant country and they held me back, right? And then I had to work my way up. Mom and dad probably had owned their own business in their country. They come here, they're working for somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I love how you're saying it and you say it very confidently. You do not have to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be exactly where you left off or even higher because you pivoted and came over here, right?
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
saying those lines, I think that's a very strong line that if anyone's listening and they feel like they're not inclining, and they're making that excuse for themselves. They're saying, I can't do it because I'm an immigrant. And you're basically saying anything is possible,
Yeah.
right? We don't have to be here. We could be here. So I appreciate you to really hitting home with that, because people need to hear that. People need to hear that. The realness that's in there. You did it, right? So
And if I can, they can do it too.
come on, sister. Be your brother's
Yeah.
keeper, like you said. In
Mm-hmm.
your consultant work, you have to balance like data driven strategy, empathy driven storytelling. Like, why do you believe both are essential in driving long term impact?
So the truth is, a lot of people who migrate to the US or Canada or the UK anywhere, right? Especially Africans, not just Africans, right? When you think about it, Asians, Hispanics, there's a culture, there's a culture shock, right? A culture shock in the way you speak, in communication. There's a culture shock in a lot of things, right? And so the way I think about it, it's all intertwined for me. So first of all, it starts out as resilient immigrants. So first of all, you understand that you're not alone. So we have that community.
Come on.
You're listening to people providing stories, inspiring stories to let you know, like, hey, you can do this, you got this, right? If I did it, you can do it as well. So first of all, that helps with the mindset shift, right? And then we move on to the career aspect. Okay, now your mindset is good. Now we want you to go get a good job, right? And these are the ways or the strategies you need to do it, right? This is how you need to package your resume. This is how you need to speak at the interview. This is how you need to explain your experiences. Some words that you use back home might not translate properly here. So these are the right words that you should use instead. So having that is where my consulting work comes in. We provide consultation services to individuals who need it, to coach them, teach them, train them on how to position themselves, whether it's their career, whether it's their business. Branding is everything. How you present yourself is how people are going to accept you, right? And then
Sure, I
finally,
give you that.
when you get the job, so now we've helped you, we've provided insight strategies, you've consulted with us, and now you're in the job. How can you maintain that job? How can you ensure that you're doing everything to position yourself as the right fit, that the organization did not make a mistake in hiring you, right? So ensuring that you not only continue learning, continue advancing yourself, again, going back to that growth mindset, not staying comfortable, but knowing that you need to keep developing. You need to exude executive presence. You need to dress the part. You need to speak the part. You need to look the part. All of those things are extremely important. So I feel like it's all intertwined, right? So I have Resilient Immigrants, which is the foundation. I have Agile Career Consulting, which is the career coaching program. And I have the Etiquette Global Academy, which is there to help people be refined, ensure that they have executive presence, that they are polished, they're able to speak, articulately and things like that.
The fact that you got those many layers, and it shows that the layers, if anyone was to join that platform, join your company, join that movement, there's so much more to it. It's not like it stops. You're not pigeonholing anybody. You're not like, okay, well, you did this. This is because there's so many levels to it, right?
Yeah.
And if people want to own their own business, like you're setting them up heavy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're probably one of the first people to believe in them, you
Yeah.
know. So kudos to you on that, because that's a
Yeah.
big thing to help someone sometimes see their true potential when
Mhm.
they're doubting themselves, and they're not just doubting themselves because they don't feel like they're talented. Society makes them feel like that way. When you're in a corporate environment and everyone's connected and you're just like that outcast, you feel like you don't fit in, or you start to
Yeah.
you start to develop your business and you don't even know how to advertise or open up an LLC. It's because you just don't have access to the resources or know how to do it. So
Exactly.
the fact that you were there to be like, wait, hold on now,
Mm-hmm.
before you incorporate, let's LLC first,
Yeah.
and giving that breakdown would make any immigrant walk away and feel like that
Yep.
stress relief,
Yeah.
right? So
They
I can
didn't really
imagine
need
that,
to make all those mistakes.
yeah,
Yeah.
you walking away every night smiling,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a rewarding job.
It is. It is.
That is, some people just don't like their job, but the fact that you're able to help individuals like yourself,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying, that look, talk like you, that are immigrants from other countries, and you're like, I know what you're going through. I can
Yep.
relate. Yeah, you got to meet them
Yep.
where they're at.
Yep.
So
And
congrats.
fun fact, right? I had no business. I never had imagined starting Resilient Immigrant. But one day, I literally heard from God. Again, this is me going back to my religious spiritual part, right?
Yep.
And the message was, help my people. And I couldn't understand it. It was just help my people, help my people. And I'm like, who are these people? Right. And it started occurring to me that because at the time I had transitioned from a low paying job to a significantly high paying job. And no one looked like me in that job. I was the only female, I was the only Black individual. And when I tell friends or just people who care to listen, like, hey, this is what I do now, and it's paying unbelievable. The salary is great. I have the flexibility, I have the freedom. People didn't believe because they didn't know about it. You don't believe, most people don't believe what they don't see or they don't know about, right?
Yep.
And so when I started thinking, like, which people does God want me to help? It was very clear, like it's the immigrants. The immigrants have not been exposed to this level. And so you need to help them, you need to bring them out. And that's really how Resilient Immigrant started.
Mm, mm. Again, the fact that you're out there connecting the dots for people and making them
Yep.
not lose valuable time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could run around in circles trying to find
Yeah.
these answers. And it's
Yeah.
not like the answers are not there for us. You could go online.
Mm-hmm.
You could type it in how to open an LLC. But if you don't speak the language, if you
Yep.
punch in the wrong thing, that's when they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna come get you.
Yep. That's true.
They're gonna come get you. And you be like, I thought I filled it out. You filled it out incorrectly. You know that, right?
Yep.
Oh, oh man. So that it's crazy. Um, looking back right now, like when you think about all your success, like looking back at the younger version of yourself, just arriving in the U.S., who's trying to navigate like identity, career, belonging. What would you advice would you give to the younger version of you?
Hmm. So I personally, the advice I would have given to the younger version of myself was it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to not be perfect. And perfection is the thief of progress. It's the thief of everything, as a matter of fact, right? I personally, at the time when I came, I wanted everything to be so perfect, right? I wanted to have the perfect job. I wanted to, I was looking for perfection everywhere. And it was
And
one
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with looking for it.
there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasted my time
Yeah.
because
Okay. Yeah.
perfection comes from doing. Perfection comes from when you're in the act of doing, when you're in progress. The practice makes perfect. So if you're sitting waiting for the perfect time, it's never gonna come. You have to go start something, and in your process, in your progress, you become an expert, you become, perfect at what you're doing. And so yeah, for me personally, that's the advice I would give to my younger self.
Mm, mm. Okay. Okay. I know the younger version of you was like, let me just get to it. You
Yeah,
probably like at the same time like enjoy yourself.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's like hold on now, hold on. Um, as someone who has like turned like your personal struggle and into like a success story, and obviously into a business that could obviously help other individuals as well too. Other immigrant professionals to learn how to, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, you know, thrive, not try to survive, in new environments. Like, talk to us about that now, and leaving it with this last question. Like, how do you feel now that the work that you have put in over these many years now has transpired into you helping so many people and potentially helping the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, it's really just being obedient, right? I don't take any of the credit. I didn't, my goal was not to have a big platform. The goal was to have impact, was to help people, right? And so that's always going to be the focus. Okay. The big platform of the people, the that's on the side. At the end of the day, is how are we changing lives? How are we impacting lives? How are we making life better for an immigrant, right? And so that's really it.
Bro, Miss Vivian, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the whole Zaka community for just taking the opportunity to be present with us and sharing your journey. I think that something that I've taken away from your conversation, like just like you said, the resilience. Your company is not just within the name of the company is in you as well, right? And to know that someone has a company that it's not like you just made it up out of scratch. You're like, hey, I just got a company, let me make some money. You were like, no, I want to make something a lot more meaningful. I want to help change people and I want to help give people a better opportunity because I know the amount of struggle it took for me to even get here, right?
Yeah.
And we have our brothers and sisters, our cousins, our nephews that are all going through that struggle that literally are trying to find a way in but can't. The struggle already is just coming, leaving your where you're from, leaving your family, your friends, your house, your job, your schooling, and starting brand new. That already is the struggle. Why do we
Yeah.
need to add more to it?
Mm-hmm.
And with your company, that alleviates that extra baggage that that someone could face. So Vivian, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. It was a pleasure being here today.
Yes, yes. And I want to let the listeners know if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Vivian, please check us out at ZakaConnect.com and follow our feed, Zaka Connect, or follow us at Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts.